Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Freedom Air channel. This is Joseph once again. So this is kind of the beginning of a new series I was thinking about doing. I was driving back from San Marcos, Texas to my base here in Killeen, Texas. A quick shout out to everybody in the office. Say hi everybody. Hi. He's on the phone talking with some customers now. But questions about piloting. You know, piloting is something that I've been doing all my life. I mean, it's in the blood. I love to do it. If it flies, I love to talk about it, from helicopters to airplanes. And I realize there's a lot of questions and a lot of lack of confidence out there from what's an RNAV approach, what's a GPS approach. There's so many approaches out there from instruments. Right now, I'm right in the middle of just doing some training for an airline, Envoy Airlines. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now, so you can see there's Envoy. It's called the RTP program, Rotor Transition Program. I kind of got a little mixed branding going on with my Freedom Air jacket, but I'm in my Freedom Air office. What's really cool is when you join the world of aviation, you're inherently put into a world of acronyms and abbreviations. IFR, VFR, VMC, IMC, and instruments it's even greater. You have GPS, VOR, ILS, NDB, RNAV, LNAV, VNAV, LPV, MDA, DA. And if you're a pilot who's already through your instruments, you kind of have an understanding of what I just said. But if you're not a pilot and you're thinking about becoming a pilot, or you're right in the middle of getting ready to be an aviator and you want to learn how to break this stuff down, there's a lot of good YouTube videos out there to break it down. But let's keep in mind, I like to keep things fun. I mean, flying is fun. Does it matter what you fly? No. If you're flying a glider, doesn't matter. It's flying. Flying an airplane, doesn't matter. Does it matter if it's an airplane or a helicopter? No, not really. No, you're going to have guys that are dead set. They're dead set on the rotors. They're dead set on the fixed wing. And that's it. If you're a fixed wing guy, they snarl at the rotary wing guys. Or if you're a rotary wing guy, you kind of snarl at the fixed wing guy. It's really not like that. I mean, every time I go up, I get just a joy of flight. And that's the way learning should be. Learning should be just as fun. So when you're staring at your G1000 screens of your aircraft, or you're staring at the GNS 430, or you're looking at another system like the 650 or the 750, and you're just like, oh man, this is really hard, or you're looking at an instrument book, or you're looking at FARs, just wow, it can get really intense. So you got to think about, how do I make this fun? And remember, flying is all about being fun. So let's go back just a little bit into navigation. How did it start in the first place? Let's roll the clock way back. We get flying and we get powered aircraft. The Postal Service comes on board, and you have pilots trying to get from point A to point B. They're trying to do it at night because they're trying to get packages delivered. So they contact Farmer Joe, I'm using my name, and they contact another farmer that's 20 miles away, and they agree that at a certain time they're going to light the bales of hay on fire and create a visual navigation aid from point A to point B. So they would fly the 20 or 30 miles or whatever the next town was. They would look for the fire. They'd fly to the fire, mark it on their little charts and say, okay, yeah, I'm checkpoint 1 complete. And they would just go checkpoint to checkpoint, flying to this different fire. Sounds like a great system, and it works, at night when you can see the fire. Now, what if one of those farmers forgets to light the fire? So you're just flying along looking for this fire, and you've flown 10 minutes or whatever, and it's not lit. So you just kind of end up aimlessly flying out there lost, because we had no other way to tell you where to go. We had no way back then to figure out, navigating by the stars wasn't really practical. So there was really no other way to navigate, especially at night, except for going from fire to fire. Well, that quickly lost interest, because people were getting lost all the time. And then the Navy developed something called the NDB. So the navigational, or the non-directional beacon, NDB, was created, and all they did was they put this beacon out. They would send a code, bing, 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 all the time, and you would put a receiver in your aircraft, which would then point to the NDB. So that's it. You didn't know how far you were from the NDB. You just knew that it was over there somewhere, or it was over there somewhere. And when you get close to it, it would kind of get a little bit wavy like this on the arrow. And when you cross over, it would spin around. Now you knew you crossed over the NDB, and you could navigate from NDB to NDB. But there were some downfalls to that, of course. It didn't give you distance. It wasn't that accurate. It wasn't very strong. I believe NDBs are right around the 25 nautical mile mark. So even if you didn't have Farmer Joe out there with his bale of hay on fire, you still had NDBs, very similar in your mileage and your distance from A to B. So why do I tell you all this? To give you the background and the history of what we have today. Technology is the coolest thing we've got going. I'm recording on a smartphone right now that does far more than the computers did 30 years ago. I mean, back then, 30 years ago, a computer the size of my office in here was required to do basic math. I've got a calculator app. I can do video, camera, talk to you. I can look up stuff on the internet. I mean, we all know this. We all know we have our smartphones, and we recognize the technology at hand. Aviation has also developed the same progress in technology. So what do we have now? We have all kinds of cool approaches. We got the VOR that came out shortly after that. They added the TACAN on top of that, so now you have the VOR TACAN. And then they added the DME, which is distance measuring equipment. So now you know how far you are from that particular station that's emitting a signal. You can fly a course to a VOR, fly a TACAN to a VOR and get distance to it. And then we one-upped it even more. Now we wanted to be able to fly in the clouds and land successfully to an airport. And the VOR would get us on a course, but it didn't really give us a solid vertical guidance, so we had to come up, and we still have them today. It's called the step-down approaches. You step down based on the safe altitudes for that particular airport and that approach. Well, we've increased it, and then we got the ILS system on board. The federal government spends millions of dollars installing the ILS system throughout the world, at aviation airports throughout the world. The U.S. has been pretty much the leader on all this. So the instrument landing system, and that gets you down on an inbound course, a localizer course with vertical guidance. You get a glide slope. So as long as you stay on this glide slope that comes down, we have a cool little t-shirt over here. As long as you stay on this glide slope and you stay on the course and follow it to the T, and you keep your crosshairs kind of looking like that on this t-shirt back here. Keep those white crosshairs exactly where they are. You've got your course line here, and you've got your vertical guidance right there. You keep it like that down to about 200 feet. The idea is you'll pop out of the clouds. Let's take you out to the hangar, and we'll keep talking. You pop out of the clouds, and you look up, and there's a runway. It's the coolest thing, especially when you're flying in instrument meteorological conditions, IMC. It's going to get a little dark, guys. Let me turn some lights on here. Just give me a second. But yeah, sure enough, when you're flying these different types of approaches, the ILS was called a precision approach. It is called a precision approach. And you get into minimums that are down to 200 feet. Turn the light on too. And that allows you to see the runway. That allows you to pop out. And essentially all you got to do is put the remaining portion of your flaps in. If you're flying a nice small single engine airplane like this one right here, this Piper Arrow, flying one like this, gear down, flaps down, set your props, full mixture, and prepare for landing. And then you just pull your power back and you come right in, grease your landing, make a pretty landing to runway 35 or whatever runway you have at your local airfield or where you're going. So that's the idea. Technology has continued to grow. The GPS came out. I remember GPS, we had the little Garmin. You can get a little Garmin GPS and it would tell you where you are. Basically, like if you're hiking or if you're driving. We would put those Garmins in our dash of the airplanes, or in my 20 years of flying helicopters, we would put them in there as well because we didn't have a cool fancy moving map display. And the Garmin gave us that. They gave us a moving map display. So now we knew where we were, but it's not illegal to do an approach and it's not legal to fly off of, but it sure did give you peace of mind. So back in the day, just having that little Garmin handheld was great. Big investment though for you personally as a pilot back in the day. And now most aircraft, including this Piper Arrow right here, they come with a GPS already installed. With the GPS, you have situational awareness. It's approved for aircraft flying. And as long as the aircraft is certified, which is another acronym that you need to learn about what are the requirements for the aircraft so that it's IFR certified. And of course, you, the pilot, need to be IFR rated. So we have certified for the airplanes and we have rated for the pilot. So that the two of you can marry up together the ratings and the qualifications of both you and the airplane, and you can go fly in the clouds and use those GPS approaches. Well, to make things more difficult, we talked about the ILS, the VOR, TACAN, DME approaches. We talked about the NDB, and there are approaches for NDB, and thankfully they're pretty much phased out completely across the world because those are one of the toughest approaches you ever do because they're so unreliable. But that's an NDB approach, a whole different topic, and they're phasing them out. With the GPSs, we've added things like RNAV, Well, with RNAV, you have VNAV, LNAV. You have different levels of approaches all the way down to the MDA or down to the decision altitude. To get a decision altitude, you're going to fly an RNAV approach down to the minimum, but you have to have WASP on board the aircraft. And what is WASP? You have to confirm rameability inside your GPS. So all these acronyms are really new, but we just want to remind you, all we're trying to do is keep up with technology. So we put stuff on the ground that allows us to have more accuracy that's received in the airplane, and the airplane can give us more accuracy to fly that precision approach down to 200 feet using the RNAV equipment available and WASP, which is Wide Area Augmentation System. It's a fancy, cool word. You can look it up and see how it works. It's really neat how it works. They take reference satellites, shoots it down to the ground, and the ground has systems that validate those satellites, and they give it the accuracy, and they fire signals back to, it's called the WRM, fire back to other systems, and then you get more accuracy, and then the aircraft translates it, and the aircraft has to have dual GPS to do a WASP enabled approach down to the LPV minimums. Otherwise, you're just doing a non-precision approach. All that to say is, I'm telling you all this, and I'm kind of shotgun blasting on my first flight training videos here on my YouTube, is I want to be able to teach that to you in kind of a fun way. There's nothing like when I click on a YouTube video to learn something, and I want to learn about doing an approach, I want to learn about more on RNAV, or learn about the ILS system, or whatever it is I'm trying to learn about. And what do? You get someone where the camera's pointed at a chart. So you see this chart, you see an approach chart, you're like, well, that looks cool. And here comes a voice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to training. We're going to talk about the WASP-enabled GPS. My goodness, and the whole video is like that. There's no flair or excitement. I'm telling you, man, instruments is fun. I just got done flying instruments yesterday. 5 hours, went to San Angelo, Texas. We were cruising at, we cruised at 5,000 feet. No, 6,000 feet on the way out there. Above it, so when we took off from San Marcos, it was the coolest feeling. It was overcast at 1,200. We took off from the runway, climbed up. We got our clearance to initially 4,000, then we were cleared additionally up to 6,000 later. Right on through the cloud layer. Really cool. You're focused. You're flying the instruments. You're doing everything you've been taught to do, and then you pop out on top. Beautiful. Just drop dead gorgeous. Sun shining, blue skies, and you have a huge white blanket. And what's that white blanket? Of course, it's the cloud layer below you. That's what turned me on to flying when I was just a little kid. Jumped in an airline with my dad, and we popped up through these clouds, and it was beautiful up there. I don't care how many times you do it, it's just awe-inspiring. So this is why we do a lot of these things that we do. We beat ourselves up when we learn all these cool acronyms and approaches and procedures and things, but we do it for the joy of stuff like popping through the clouds, being able to get to our destination in IMC conditions. And for those of you that are new to flying, I'm going to throw a lot of things at you. And I do that for one, so you can start learning the language of being a pilot. Being a pilot, it's a whole nother language. Like any other thing, like learning Spanish or French or, whatever language you're learning, you got to learn the basics. So basics, we're going to throw things at you like IMC. What does that stand for? Instrument Meteorological Conditions. That means you're actually in the clouds. In this particular case, of a direct example is you're flying through the clouds. It could be other examples too, okay? And if you look at definitions through the FARs, that's really what it means. And now you ask, what's an FAR? Again, another definition, Federal Aviation Regulation. So this is Pilot Joe. Stay tuned to more, and I'm going to break things down in hopefully a fun way so that you can understand them. And when I say something like FAR or IMC, or can you file an IFR flight plan in VMC conditions? Well, can you file a VFR flight plan in IMC conditions? It's kind of a trick question, but it's also a very straightforward question. If you don't have a CFI, a certified flight instructor, or someone teaching you the ropes, sure, you can look us up, Freedom Air, helicopters.com. It's soon to be changed to Freedom Air Aviation Services.com. But right now, you can look us up. You can give us a call, and you can drop a question. But typically, these questions should be reserved to you to go onto the books and look up the FARs yourself, or to call your CFI. So just a nice quick story. Take a room as big as the 6,500 square foot hangar that we have here in Killeen, Texas, and fill it up with books. That's going to be the federal regulation room. It's huge. So the Code of Federal Regulations It's just got an enormous amount of books to it. We're talking about transportation regulations, DOT regulations, you know, subway systems that have federal grant money to go with it. Well, why do you think the FAA would be any different? Well, we're not. The Federal Aviation Administration is guided by those Code of Federal Regulations. We fall under Chapter 14 of all that. So when you're talking to a federal guy or a Fed, they're going to say, well, according to CFR 14, Part 91, that's what they're talking about. We as pilots are always going to say FARs, man. Refer to the FARs. There's two pieces in the FARs that we want to think about that are relative to us, and I'll just kind of give you this quick little tip, little snippet of information. You guys can come back at me. I'll show you some cockpit pictures, some videos, some really cool stuff that we're doing, from helicopter tours, hog hunts, shooting out of the bird, to doing my IFR approaches in an airplane. I'm right in the middle of training for an airline, so I've been learning some stuff from a guy named, well, his video is called Aviator Chavez. He does some really cool videos. He's a first officer at Envoy Airlines. That's the shirt that I'm wearing right now. That's where I'm going. I should be there in about 3 weeks from the time of this video, so there'll be a lot more to come. I'll share information for those that are in the RTP program. I'll share information with those that are wanting to aspire to become pilots and airline pilots, or those that want a career in helicopters. It's kind of the best of both worlds, because on the weekend I come back and I'll fly my helicopter. Or, you know, if I get a chance, I'll come back and I'll do flight training on it and just keep my rotor chops going as well as my airplane chops. So I'm one of those guys that can kind of talk, hopefully intelligently, or at least for fun. You know, I'll be able to talk about both of the worlds. I've been in aviation for about 29 years now. So 4 years in the Navy, 16 years in the Army, flying Blackhawks, plus a lot of other years in general aviation. So back to the books and the parts, right? So we have two parts. Only two parts that we really need to know about. The rest of them, unless you're in business or you're an operator or you're a general manager, you don't really need to focus on. So the first one's Part 61. What does it take to become a pilot? It tells you everything right there. You got to be 18 years old, be able to read and speak English. These are the requirements for you to be a private pilot. Here's the requirements for you to be a commercial pilot. Here's the requirements for you to get your instrument rating. You want to get a multi-engine rating. You want to get a helicopter rating, a gyroplane rating. Whatever you want to do, Part 61 is the name of the game. Now, when it gets to regulations, do I need to file an alternate airfield when filing an IFR flight plan to a destination airport? How long or how much fuel should I have on board the aircraft when I'm filing IFR to a destination? Guess what? That's in Part 91 of the big Code of Federal Regulations book. You'll find those in both Part 91 and your personal requirements in Part 61. Look, I hope you enjoyed this first video. There'll be much more to come. I plan to keep everything aviation related, so the background will typically show my office or airplanes or something different that I've flown. I'll try and put some other cool videos in there. You ask me what you want and I'll tell you, but right now I'm just trying to give you the journey through my life, and I'll tell you about what's currently happening. I'm a business owner in aviation, and I'm also a career pilot. I had a career in helicopters. Now I'm going for a career in jets with a really cool airline, and hopefully in years to come I'll even be a captain or a first officer with American Airlines themselves. Right now we're flying American Eagle, the old American Eagle that's owned and operated by the American Airlines Group, which is flown by Envoy. If you followed that, great, because that's where I'm going. See you guys later. Bye-bye. This is Joe.